Welcome to our study of Romans. This is week 1, so with that, we're going to start off with some fast facts about the book of Romans. Romans was written by Paul, who was formerly known as Saul of Tarsus. When he was Saul, he wasn't so much beloved by Christians. He, in fact, held the coats of people who stoned a Christian. Romans was written in the year 57 AD. Paul wrote the letter after he had finished 25 years of ministry and mission work all through the known world. He had been in Asia Minor and Macedonia and Greece. Having finished that 25-year stretch of mission work, Paul was now headed west. He writes the book or the letter of Romans in anticipation of that trip. Written nearly 2,000 years ago, Romans somehow transcends time and culture and continues to speak to us and transform us still today. So to kick off our study of Romans and chapter 1 of Romans, I want to talk about this thing. This is my phone. Rewind about a year and a half ago, and that phone was the thing I was so excited about. I couldn't wait to get it. It had all kinds of fun things about it, all kinds of different features, and I knew all the different features about it. I was so excited about it. I thought it was going to change my life. It had a better camera, better structure, better way of working, and I couldn't wait to get it. It was going to be awesome. And it was a great phone, but fast forward about a year and a half, that phone is now not that much different than any other phone. And it hasn't changed my life that much. It's not really that much different. Now, you might be asking yourself, what in the world does a phone have to do with a letter that was written nearly 2,000 years ago? In short, it has everything to do with that letter that was written 2,000 years ago. As you read the first bit, this first chapter of Romans chapter 1, you find out what it says. It says in Romans 1:25 this: they traded the truth about God for a lie. So they worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator himself. We do this all the time. We worship the created thing rather than Creator. And when we do this, Paul says that we live a life that ends up being inferior to the one that we could be living. It's a more narrow way of living life. He says that when you worship things that are created, it's not going to go so well for you. For example, if you worship your work, you can find yourself working so hard and trying to get so far ahead that you end up neglecting your family. If you worship a relationship, that person in your life you think is the most amazing person, you think that person is going to make life so great, but what you find is that eventually they're going to let you down. They're going to fail. They're not going to be what you wanted them to be. They're not going to fix everything. Or you could worship a piece of technology like a phone or anything else or a TV, and you could think that it's going to be this thing that's going to make your life so much better, but ultimately, whenever you worship something like technology, you realize that there's always something better. Paul says in Romans that there's a different way. In Romans 1:16, he says, "For I am not ashamed of this good news about Christ. It is the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile." Paul says that this different way begins with the power of God, the power of what Jesus accomplished. There's something powerful in this good news about Jesus. As he does that, he also not only says that there's power there, but he gives us a plan for how to access that power. He says in Romans 1:5, "Through Christ, God has given us the privilege and authority as apostles to tell Gentiles everywhere what God has done for them, so that they will believe and obey him, bringing glory to his name." Paul gives us this plan that if we believe and if we obey, there will be glory given to his name. There will be something different, something better that will happen in our life. This more fulfilling and meaningful life is accessible. Paul contrasts here two different ways of living. He says that there's a better way. In one way, we can find ourselves worshiping these created things, whether it's a relationship or technology or nature or something that we think will make our life better. And when we worship these things, we end up finding ourselves living a more narrow, inferior life, not as good, not as meaningful. These things are good, but they're not worthy of worship. Paul says that if we choose then, instead of worshiping these other things, to worship the creator of those things, that produces this more meaningful and full and purposeful life. To worship God is a way that we can begin to experience that. Now it's your turn. go ahead, grab a friend, go by yourself, maybe get a few different people together if you want, and go and read Romans chapter 1. And then once you've read Romans chapter 1, when you finish that, we're going to have a few questions for you to consider each week. The first set of questions, the first 3, we'll ask every single week because it's a good practice to get into when you're reading anything in the Bible. The second set of questions, the second 3, will be a set of questions that are specific to that chapter. These are the questions. What jumped out at you as you read this chapter? And how does what you read challenge you to transform the way you think? And then finally, in what ways does this transformed way of thinking translate into living differently? Now, for chapter 1, we have these 3 questions. In verse 5, Paul describes his goal. What is his goal, and why do you think he calls it a privilege? Question 2 is, in what ways do we continue to worship created things instead of the Creator? And then the final question is, verse 16 describes the good news about Jesus and the power of God at work. What's so powerful about that? Thanks for checking out our video study of Romans. We're going to post one of these every single week on Monday. And as we do, we hope this is a chance for you to be transformed by God as you study what he says in the book of Romans and not just conform to whatever's around you. Hope you have a great week.